right? It was Funomena, which rhymes with Funomena.
That's right.
So let's just kick off by talking a little bit about your background. I know that you began as a developer and artist, and you've come a long way in your career.
Yeah, I actually started out thinking I was going to be a fine artist. I studied art and got a scholarship to go to art school, and then very last minute I chickened out and went to the University of Chicago because I was interested in the life of the mind, where I fell in love with computer science, and so I became a computer scientist, roboticist, and an AI person. Very interested in the power of computers to tell great stories, and that led me to video games, which led me to a career in game design. My first job in game design was working on The Sims because I met Will Wright at an AI conference.
Nice.
Overlap. And eventually I became a producer, and then my most recent job was I was an executive producer of a game called Journey, which was released for the PlayStation 3 in March of last year. It did quite well. And now I have a startup called Funomena in San Francisco, which is just bootstrapping its way through its first game. So we've announced that we're doing a title with Kata Takahashi for an unannounced platform.
Great. So you've got a really kind of well-rounded background, but you've become very much associated in the industry with this idea of feeling-focused or feeling-first games. So can we just talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, I was actually just in Buenos Aires for a week teaching this workshop that I've been teaching for the last 12 years with a bunch of game designers that are interested in the idea of how to operationalize what makes games feel certain ways. And so the actual the way that games work is that they have rules, and the rules engage with players, and that creates a dynamic of play. And then over time, that dynamic creates feelings inside of the players. And so the way that we talk about this in the workshop is mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics. So the aesthetics component is the feeling component. And when I say a feeling-focused game, what I'm talking about is instead of thinking about your game from the perspective of mechanics first, like it'll be a roguelike, or it'll be a CCD, or it will be free-to-play with a monetized blah, 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 you think about the aesthetic component. When people play our game, they will feel a sense of discovery. When people play our game, they will feel a sense of awe and wonder towards the unknown. When people play our game, they will feel the thrill of victory over defeat, because they will be engaged moment to moment in this idea of accomplishing a great victory, whether that's with many other people, which is a sense of fellowship, or on their own, which is a sense of being able to survive against all odds. And so when you talk about games that are very successful, you can talk about them from the sense of mechanics, but you can also talk about them from the sense of aesthetics. And I believe that if you actually start with the aesthetics and move backwards to the mechanics through the dynamics, you end up with a cycle that you can constantly be asking yourself, is this game on feeling? And if you ask yourself that question, you can actually create a feeling-focused game that is incredibly successful, but also really true to itself in every aspect.
So can we just pick out some specific examples of games that in your mind are very successful?
Sure.
That bring in feelings. One of them that you mentioned backstage, which surprised me, is Minecraft.
That's right, yeah. Minecraft is incredibly successful at making people feel the sense of discovery, right? You feel self-sufficient if you've survived the night in Minecraft, and then once you've built something really spectacular, you've gone into the depths of the underworld and found all these treasures, and then you've built something that you think is really like a masterpiece. It could be anything. It could be a giant tower, it could be a castle, it could be a little tiny igloo, but underneath it is just caverns and caverns filled with treasures and gold. This is a sense that you've created this world and you've survived and you've been at the center of its creation. It makes you feel like a god. It makes you feel like you were a pioneer, like you did it yourself. And I think that every aspect of Minecraft is dedicated towards making you feel this way or sharing that feeling with other people. If you start a server that's just creation only and it's open and anyone can do anything, you can still feel like pioneers because you can build the mines of Mordor, or you can build, any environment that you want to. You can build the Louvre if you want to. And being in a project with other people on a Minecraft server that's rebuilding something in the real world even can feel just as amazing as building something on your own by yourself against all odds in that world. So I think that Minecraft is a perfect example of a game that was built because it was trying to create this childlike feeling of discovery and building.
I love that godlike.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same feeling that you get from playing The Sims, I mean, this is one of the reasons The Sims is so successful. is because it makes people feel like they're in charge of something that they created themselves.
So you would recommend that a game developer talk more about their feelings.
That's right.
In order to create a feeling-first game. So does that mean, sitting with a glass of wine with a friend and talking about your day, or does this mean we got to get all these gamers in to see a therapist once a week?
I think that one of the challenges of a creative team is actually having a dialogue with one another about the way the game feels and the way that it feels to work on the game. Like, it can be quite difficult to make video games or any kind of creative project with a collaboratory kind of approach. Let's say, for example, that there are people on your team that are really good at programming, and there are people on your team that are really good at sound design, and there are people that are really good at managing stats and numbers on spreadsheets, and then there are some people that are just really great at drawing. All of those people can want to build a feeling-focused game, but their approaches to the feeling itself, the way that they're involved in the process, can be very different. And so I think it's really important for developers to be honest when something doesn't feel right. It can be difficult for an artist to say to a programmer, I played the latest build and it just feels like it's slower, or a designer, I don't really like those tuning changes, it made the character feel laggy, I'm just not really feeling it. It's much easier to step back into your role and say, well, I just draw the pictures, I'll just keep drawing the art. And then what happens is 3-6 months down the line, when you're really trying to get that last push in and make the game amazing, your heart's not in it because you never really said that you didn't really feel it. I think it's very important to confront those feelings constantly in a way that's respectful of everyone's role, but also respectful of the fact that we're all gamers and that we all want this game to feel great. On Journey, we had a really aggressive process of prototyping things to see if they felt good, discussing them with each other to see if we thought they felt good, and if it made it past us, we were the biggest critics of this game, then we would play test it with people who'd never seen it, and we would watch them to see if our hunch was right. Our hunch wasn't always right. Sometimes we put something in, we thought it was amazing, and it totally disrupted the game, and then we would cut it. Or we would go back to the drawing board and start over. That constant process of asking yourself, are we on feeling, involves also stepping out of your comfort zone and being able to step up and say, I am going to be a player of this game in the long run, regardless of my role. I can be the customer service person. My opinion about this particular feature is just as valuable as anyone else's.
And gamers are always thinking about customer acquisition. How do we reach people that might not be avid gamers, or how do we just reach new demographics? So, you mentioned earlier that you would test it on your parents and your friends' parents, and these are not people who would typically, call themselves gamers. But is this kind of a UX and design strategy that you would recommend?
Absolutely. One of the most important things to do for a game like Journey, or the games that I'm making at Funomena with Kata, for example, is to really put your money where your mouth is. So if you want to make a game that's accessible to kids and parents, or you want to make a game that's accessible to women because it's an online game, they're going to be at least 50% of the market, if not more. Or you want to make a game that breaks through the boundaries of the perception of online play, which is what Journey wanted to do. You want to bring people into the idea of playing a multiplayer game who would normally be kind of a little bit scared of it. If that's your goal, then you need to be testing with the people in that demographic, and you always need to be testing with them. Not at the end, when you've made all the decisions, but at the beginning, when you're just trying to figure out where you're going. And you need to be able to listen to that demographic. You need to be able to hear what they say and see what they experience without all the cloud of what could have been, or what should have been, or what you were intending. And that's really the hardest part, honestly, like accessing the part of you that can look at what you've made objectively and see that it's not necessarily hitting right now is so important, because you can't get to the place where you're hitting unless you actually dump bad ideas and dump preconceptions about what players want. Kids, for example, are really difficult to engage. I've been working on a prototype, it's an iPad prototype, just for touch controls for an idea that we have. And I took it to PAX with me, and I just randomly, people that I know in the industry would be at PAX with their kids. 5, 4, 7, 12. I would just put the thing in front of them with absolutely no information and say, hey, take a look at this and see what you think. There was no tutorial, there was nothing to tell them what to do. And just watch how at different ages, different children have a different approach to touching characters, to trying to figure out what the controls are like, to experimenting wildly with just throwing characters around or smashing things together, or just sometimes watching quietly to see if there's a cue. You know, depending on the age range, a child may have a lot of autonomy in their interaction with touch controls, or they may be very, very tentative, or just want to be entertained because they're a little bit young and they're tired. Being able to see all of that gives you the ability to tailor the controls to the right demographic. If you wait until you've got the game 6 months or a year done, and then you do that, I just think you're putting yourself at risk of not being able to reach those people. You're putting barriers between you and that customer.
And is there a way through this strategy to bring more trust to the parents? Because parents will, you know, we were talking about this at lunch, parents will often look at a game and think, God, this is a scam. It's just a separation center for me and my money. So how do you inspire that feeling from parents that this is a good thing for their kids?
That's hard. Honestly, I think that that's probably the parents' feeling about most things in life. I mean, if you take your kid into a 7-Eleven, right, and all of the candy is just an eye level for your child. I mean, it's everywhere you go, you know, your kid is being marketed to, and I think that that's really difficult. The way that we do it is we actually genuinely care about curiosity, we care about discovery, we care about building systems that will reward kids and parents to work together, will reward two people on the same couch trying to kind of give something a try, or looking at the screen and having dialogue about it. We try to design for dialogue and for conversation. Because really, we're at a kind of a crux right now as a society. There's a lot of this going on. I'm at lunch with you, but I'm really answering my email, or I'm walking this child, but really I'm actually just looking at my phone. And many of the people that work at Funomena feel that, like, this is a risk. Like, this is what matters, you know, and this is why we're on the planet. You know, this is the moment. And so we design for that moment.
Not so this.
Yeah, exactly. Not so much this.
You, Larry.
Even the posture that you take, right? We've done studies now that show that this slumped over keyboard, phone, iPad posture causes you to not breathe. And when you don't breathe, you're not relaxed. And when you're not relaxed, you're stressed. And then this gets worse. So maybe what we're doing is we're making this worse instead of better. So we designed for this. We designed for this conversation. Like, oh, well, what if we tried that? The way to win parents over is to be genuinely interested in them having a good time.
Okay, I got one more quick question because I'm sure we're going to have a question from the audience. Is there a particular emotion that you could bring out in a game that you found is most likely to cause somebody to get addicted to that game?
Well, I mean, the most addicting thing is achievement.
More addicting than fear and...
I mean, if you can survive something and achieve something great, then it feels great. But, you know, that's why I started a company, because I wanted to achieve something great. In a way, I mean, I think the things that are the most dangerous to us are also the most helpful to us. Feeling love is really addictive. Feeling passion, feeling thrill is really addictive. That's why people go on roller coasters. That's why people base jump. We can put these things into our games. I think the most important thing is, why are you doing it? What do you really want the player to take away from the experience? If it is truly a sense of achievement, if it comes at a cost of $5 or $10, that's minimal. Like, my most recent achievement was that I went on a helicopter ride that took me under the Golden Gate Bridge. It was totally amazing. It's really great because you're in the helicopter and you're coming along and the bridge is here, and then he goes, all right, we're going to go under, and he drops and accelerates at the same moment. So you have this incredible experience of falling as you're falling towards the bridge, going under it and then coming around it. It was pretty expensive. It was about $25 a minute, but it was totally worth it. I don't know if any of your games are going to be $25 a minute, and they might give me the same kind of sense of achievement. You know, some are for some people, but that's the question you have to ask: is it worth it for the feelings that they get, for the achievement, for the thrill, for the scare, for the passion, for the love? That's the question to ask yourself.
We got time for one question from the audience.
Somebody,
and I'm really hoping someone has a question about feeling first games. Yes. Shoot.
I'm just going to ask you guys a question.
You still can.
So I'm wondering, like, with your experiences with developing Journey, it's not a traditional game. It doesn't have a traditional ending. It doesn't have any tradition almost at all. Like, so, but it was really successful. So how do you, moving forward, creating games, how do you try to find that balance between what the market kind of sees as a traditional game versus what you've learned with your experiences with Journey?
I think that I will continue to work on games with passionate creatives like myself and Kata, who who want to bring something new to players and want to solve a problem. I mean, when we set out to make Journey, we were really concerned that online experiences were mostly defined by spending time with another person shooting at a third thing or shooting each other. That they were mostly focused on this very simple interaction, and that they didn't at all engage this interaction, like the romance of meeting someone from really far away that you experience when you travel, or even when you hike. You know, when you go on a hike and you see someone walking towards you in the middle of the wilderness, you have a sensation about that person that's very different from the one that you have when you see someone on the train. And like, we really wanted to understand what is it that makes that person in isolation when you're alone and when you have this sense of wonder about nature. Why can't we get there more often? You know, and so I think that the way to respond is to look at what is actually happening to people day to day and ask yourself, what do those people need? Ask yourself, what do you need? What's missing from your life? That's the way that I think you make things that are new, but also responsive to the situation that we're all in. The innovations that change our lives don't always change them for the better, but we have the power to look at how they affect us and then try to correct. That's what Funomena is about right now. Rewarding creativity, rewarding curiosity, rewarding dialogue with other players and with other people in your life. Like, that's what we think games can do, whether they're on a tablet or on a controller or in the real world space. It's about having a philosophy that you're trying to help the person that you make this for have a new experience, something fresh. And I think that's universal. I don't think it really is about what the mechanics are. It's about what the feeling is. You can do that with a free-to-play game. You can do it with a paid game. You can do it with a disc game. You can do it in any game. You just have to be thinking about the feeling instead of the mechanics.
And what's the one thing do you think that we're still missing now that will be the focus for your next game?
One of the things I'm really interested in right now is the fact that narratives in games are about success and achievement, but the success and achievement in those games is about conquering or eliminating the threat. And my experience of success and achievement has been about adapting and growing through trauma, through change, through challenge. I feel like we are all very adaptive, and we all learn to incorporate narratives about challenge in our lives. That's a process of becoming more than what you were by the challenges that you overcome. But a lot of games are about eliminating that challenge or having erased it or gone back and got revenge. And so I'm really interested in this idea of transformation and how we can make games about the ways in which even the things that hurt us most are actually in some ways very good for us.
And do you want to ask one last question to the audience before we...
How many of you think that you can make something that gives people a new feeling? Go do it.
Love that. Great parting words.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Robin.